morning. Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Rogamos a las delegaciones, por favor, acercarse a sus lugares para que iniciemos nuestra sesión. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We ask delegations to kindly come to their places so we can start our session this morning.
Muy buenos días. Por favor, solicito encarecidamente a los delegados tomar sus asientos, por favor.
Y al secretario general también, que tome su asiento.
Sí. Declaro abierta la tercera sesión plenaria del 53º periodo ordinario de sesiones de la Asamblea General. Continuaremos con el diálogo de los jefes de delegación sobre el tema de este periodo ordinario de sesiones, fortalecimiento de una cultura de responsabilidad democrática con promoción, protección e igualdad de los derechos humanos en las Américas. Recuerdo a los jefes de delegación que harán sus presentaciones en el orden previamente acordado. Asimismo, de conformidad con el acuerdo adoptado esta mañana, esperamos que las exposiciones no excedan de 6 minutos por delegación para que el tiempo asignado a este punto del temario permita la participación de todas las delegaciones. Por un acuerdo bilateral se le ha cedido la palabra a Estados Unidos y, por tanto, le ofrezco la palabra al colega, el amigo, el secretario Anthony Blinken.
Mr. President, thank you very, very much. Secretary General, colleagues, buenos dias, bonjour, bon dia. It is, again, very good to be with everyone here today in this place that brings us together every day. This is the House of the Americas. More than 75 years ago, our nations came together to affirm what the OAS Charter called the indispensable role of democracy in delivering on security, on human rights, on development, on other vital needs of people across our hemisphere. And at the heart of this charter, and the Inter-American Democratic Charter that followed, is the recognition that the fates of our individual democracies are bound up in one another, and that when it comes to improving the lives of our people, our democracies are better together. Yet, as we meet today, a number of governments in the Americas are questioning the relevance of the OAS and democracy more broadly, the relevance to solve the problems facing many people across the hemisphere. A lack of economic opportunity, widespread insecurity, endemic corruption, an accelerating climate crisis. All problems that have helped drive an unprecedented number of people in our region from their homes. So, we find ourselves at a moment of reckoning. Do we still believe that democracy is the best system to deliver for our people? And if so, are we willing to recommit ourselves to strengthening our fellow democracies and the institutions where we work together? The United States answer to this question is unequivocal. We believe in democracy and its enduring capacity for renewal and for revitalization. We believe it is the best way to meet the needs of our citizens and people across the region that we share. And we believe in the OAS, both in its capacity to improve our individual democracies and unite us to solve problems that none of us have the capacity to tackle effectively alone. As our former president, President Jimmy Carter, said at the OAS many decades ago now, to make our charter, and I quote, more than empty pieces of paper, to make it a living document, all of our member states must believe and act to uphold and to improve it. So today, let me briefly make the case for how we can recommit ourselves together to make our charter a living thing for people across our hemisphere. First, we continue to support and strengthen the OAS's core competencies, where it has a proven track record of improving our democracies in concrete ways. The OAS electoral observer missions are the gold standard for providing an independent, impartial assessment of whether elections are free and fair. In 2023 alone, the OAS has observed elections in Antigua and Barbuda, in Ecuador and Paraguay, and it will observe Guatemala's presidential vote on June 25th, just 2 days from now. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights has for decades provided a forum for citizens in all of our nations to seek justice for human rights violations and abuses, from the enforced disappearances and extrajudicial killings of the dirty wars and the drug wars, to the report it published just last week, concluding that the Cuban government agents were involved in the 2012 deaths of human rights defenders Osvaldo Paya and Harold Cespero. And the Commission has been a trailblazer in promoting the rights of traditionally marginalized populations, including peoples of African descent, indigenous communities, and LGBTQI+ people. The America's Health Corps, we talked about that earlier today, will train 500,000 healthcare workers over 5 years, 500,000, on key issues like maternal and child health. And we're well on our way to realizing that goal. We've already trained 119,000 people just in the last year. That is going to make a material, concrete difference in the lives of our citizens. Long-standing strengths like these are the reason that our ambassador to the OAS, Frank Mora, fought so hard to rally support for one of the biggest increases to the organization's budget that we've seen in decades. The United States funds approximately half of that budget, thanks to the support of our Congress. I want to thank CARICOM for spearheading the effort to approve what is a crucial increase. We also fully support the outside review of the OAS General Secretariat so that we can ensure that people in the Americas are getting the most out of the resources that all of us are contributing. Second, we can recommit to holding ourselves and countries across the region to the core principles of the OAS and the Inter-American Democratic Charters. And that, of course, means continuing to shine a spotlight on the widespread violations of human rights perpetrated by authoritarian governments and looking for ways to hold them appropriately accountable and stop their repression at the same time as we seek to aid their victims. But that's only part of it. We also have to make our voices heard when our fellow democracies stray from the principles that we've all agreed repeatedly to uphold. When democratically elected leaders in our region try to weaken the independent institutions that provide checks and balances, when they crack down on the media and on civil society, when they fire or harass prosecutors, judges, election officials, or other independent government officials just for doing their jobs, when they try to extend term limits, when they attack or try to discredit multilateral institutions, including this one, for raising legitimate criticisms, we cannot stand by. We need to speak up. Not because any one of our members thinks that we're perfect. We know that we're not. No democracy is. But rather because we're invested in each other's democracies, because we made a commitment to hold one another accountable, because we know that one of the most dangerous steps a democracy can take is to strip away citizens' rights to improve the system from within. And because we know that the risks inherent in backsliding not just to individual countries and their citizens, but to entire regions, are real. The United States is not immune to this. Throughout our history, we have grappled with challenges to our own democracy. We continue to grapple with them to this very day. Indeed, in so many ways, these experiences underscore for us the importance of always striving to address our own shortcomings and to do it openly, to do it transparently, not to pretend they don't exist or to try to sweep them under the rug, because we know ultimately that is the only way to get better, the only way, as we would say, to try to form a more perfect union. That's why we open ourselves up to review and criticism from journalists, from human rights defenders, from regional and multilateral organizations. And that includes from the OAS and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which recently conducted site visits to the United States to focus on homelessness, indigenous rights, and climate change. Third and finally, we must continue to adapt our institutions and partnerships to try to seize some of the emerging opportunities and meet emerging threats. Never has the need to do this been so acute. Look at any of the big challenges that we all face that are actually affecting the lives of our people. Not a single one of them can we solve by acting alone. That's why President Biden has worked relentlessly to reinvigorate institutions like the OAS and to try to stand up new coalitions across our region and around the world. We brought together countries at the Summit of the Americas in Los Angeles to adopt the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, the first truly regional approach to this issue. And 21 countries have signed on with concrete commitments. Together with civil society, with the private sector, with humanitarian organizations, with multilateral and regional organizations, we continue to drive progress on the pledges that we made, and we will work on that day in, day out. We'll continue that later today when I have the honor of convening a ministerial meeting of our partners. In April, we convened the first ever Cities Summit of the Americas in Denver, Colorado, bringing together 250 mayors and also governors, tribal and indigenous officials, leaders from communities, NGOs, from businesses. Participants shared innovative ideas, knowledge, approaches, and forged new partnerships at the level where democracy is closest to the people it serves. Most of all, we listened, we took notes, we learned. We're working together to expand inclusive economic opportunity across the Americas. We're broadening access to the emerging technologies that are increasingly crucial for doing business. We can't have a digital divide that separates those who have access from those who do not. We launched a new economic agenda, the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity, to build more equitable growth from the bottom up and from the middle out. And we're making a push for multilateral development institutions like the World Bank to increase financing for the region's middle-income countries, as Vice President Harris discussed with our friends in CARICOM and other partners a few weeks ago at the U.S. Caribbean Leaders Meeting. Today, we're launching a new global coalition to address the public health and security threats posed by the illicit production and trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic drugs. We encourage countries across the region to join us in this effort. In many ways, the United States has been the canary in the coal mine when it comes to synthetic opioids, but we see this problem spreading, including especially in our own hemisphere. The Centers for Disease Control estimates that approximately 110,000 Americans died of a drug overdose in 2022. More than 2/3 of those deaths were the result of synthetic opioids, inflicting immeasurable suffering on families across our nation. But there is not a country across our hemisphere that is not going to be hurt by this scourge or by the transnational organized crime groups that profit from it. And the only way to effectively confront it is together. In a few weeks, I'll have the opportunity to convene dozens of my counterparts from around the world for the Coalition's inaugural meeting. Colleagues, I said at the outset that the United States continues to believe, and believes strongly, that when it comes to fulfilling the aspirations of our people, the people across the hemisphere that we share, there is no better way than democracies working together. But of all the reasons I'm confident that our democracies can ultimately deliver to meet the significant challenges we face, there is one that eclipses all others. Our citizens believe in democracy. They want democracy. The latest annual survey from Latino Barometro shows that even if most people in our hemisphere agree that democracies can and should work better, and we know that, 2/3 of our citizens still believe that democracy is the best way for government to meet their needs. 2 out of 3. That's actually an increase from just a few years ago. And if all of our citizens continue to believe in democracy, if they are still invested in making our systems better from within, in holding us accountable, there's no flaw that we cannot fix. There's no challenge that we cannot overcome in the enduring march to make the rights and aspirations of our people a living thing. Thank you. Gracias a todos.
Muchas gracias, secretario de Estado. Le ofrezco la palabra ahora a la delegación de El Salvador.
Señor presidente de la Asamblea General, excelentísimos señores ministros de Relaciones Exteriores, honorable señor secretario general de la Organización de Estados Americanos, señor secretario general adjunto de la OEA, excelentísimos señores embajadores y delegados, amigos y amigas de la prensa, señoras y señores. Señor presidente, hace más de 7 décadas nuestros países se unieron con determinación en la Conferencia Internacional Americana. En ese momento crucial adoptamos los principios y valores que cimentaron el ideal de nuestro sistema interamericano. Lamentablemente, la historia nos ha enseñado que la sola existencia del tiempo no garantiza ni la evolución ni el fortalecimiento de un mecanismo multilateral que responda a las necesidades actuales de nuestro continente y de nuestros pueblos. La corresponsabilidad colectiva se ha vuelto un desafío casi inalcanzable, desplazándose el ideal humanitario de pensar en el bienestar de todos aquellos los más vulnerables, de todos aquellos sin voz, de todos aquellos a quienes realmente nos debemos como estados en su colectividad. Conozco yo muy bien este entorno. Fui parte de él por muchos años, por más de una década, y sé que bajo la responsabilidad de todos, el compromiso de todos y un correcto enfoque, el impacto de esta organización fuera diferente. El apoyo, el acompañamiento de la organización fueran diferentes. Las circunstancias actuales requieren que se emprenda un nuevo rumbo, en el cual, sobre la base de un diálogo respetuoso y constructivo, los valores y principios que motivaron la arquitectura de este sistema se restauren con todo el vigor que se merece y se orienten en resultados claros, otra vez vuelvo, insisto, hacia el bienestar colectivo, revitalizando así el sentido original de nuestro panamericanismo. Hemos sido convocados a esta Asamblea General para conversar sobre el fortalecimiento de una cultura de responsabilidad democrática con promoción, protección e igualdad de los derechos humanos en nuestras Américas. El tema es más que propicio para que les hable sobre la violación de los derechos humanos que hemos sufrido nosotros los salvadoreños por décadas, ante el silencio ominoso y el sesgo de algunos organismos que al izar la bandera por la protección y defensa de los derechos humanos prefieren alinear y han preferido alinear por conveniencia y por intereses, han preferido alinear sus voces a intereses contrarios a lo de las grandes mayorías, a los de la verdadera gente que sufre. Señor presidente, la barbarie y la incertidumbre que amenazaba la integridad de toda una sociedad inocente era nuestra cruda realidad, que nuestro país, El Salvador, enfrentó antes del gobierno del presidente Nayib Bukele en el 2019. Éramos el país número 1 en cuanto a violencia. Éramos el país más violento del mundo en esa vergonzosa escala de medición de criminalidad. En el 2019 éramos El Salvador, el país más violento del mundo. En administraciones anteriores, bajo la sombra de la corrupción y las instituciones del Estado, en complicidad con grupos criminales y terroristas reconocidos así por el país que nos alberga en esta ocasión, los salvadoreños de bien nos enfrentamos a la incertidumbre y a la desesperanza y al terror arraigado a nuestro diario vivir. Frente a ello, bajo el liderazgo de mi presidente Bukele, con una determinación inquebrantable, hemos puesto fin a esa barbarie y emprendido una cruzada sin tregua ni retorno para restaurar la verdadera paz, la seguridad, el orden y la justicia que todos los salvadoreños se merecen después de décadas de sufrimiento y desesperanza. Nuestra estrategia para resolver el problema de la violencia es un enfoque moderno, único, que va de acuerdo a las necesidades de nuestro país, bajo un concepto estratégico de seguridad integral de múltiples dimensiones, con acciones simultáneas en los ámbitos de la seguridad interior, la seguridad pública y la seguridad ciudadana, todos interrelacionando y trabajando como un verdadero sistema. El Salvador se alza hoy con una fuerza indomable, transformando su destino con una contundencia perdurable y una estrategia de país responsable e integral, sin precedentes en nuestra historia nacional e incluso con amplio reconocimiento más allá de nuestras fronteras. Muchas gracias a los Estados miembros que nos han apoyado. Defendemos con firmeza la soberanía, la libertad y la dignidad de nuestro pueblo ante cualquier intención de someter al ciudadano trabajador, honesto y comprometido con el progreso social frente al profundo miedo de perder su derecho irrenunciable de vivir en paz y de vivir dignamente. El pleno bienestar de todos los salvadoreños, indistintamente de su lugar de residencia, es nuestra máxima prioridad. Nuestros salvadoreños dentro y fuera de nuestras fronteras, nuestra gente buena, nuestra gente trabajadora, nuestra gente que se merece lo mejor. Tomar el camino correcto de la historia le ha significado a El Salvador una serie de adversidades y críticas sin fundamento. No obstante, somos un pueblo unido, valiente, resiliente y digno. Abrazamos nuestra identidad con orgullo y no seremos doblegados en nuestra convicción de ser un país próspero, seguro y con paz duradera. Señor presidente, en El Salvador, fervientes creyentes del respeto a la autonomía de los estados, no creemos ni permitiremos ningún tipo de intervención ni cuestionamiento producto del desconocimiento de una realidad histórica que, a pesar de sus grandes retos, estamos superando. Por primera vez en la historia republicana de El Salvador, el pueblo tiene voz en las decisiones que hemos ido tomando y en las decisiones trascendentales para nuestro presente y para nuestro futuro. La nueva realidad de El Salvador es el fiel testimonio y la voz de toda una población que en su diario vivir hoy respira paz y esperanza. Como lo expresé en la Cumbre de las Américas del 2022, Algunos sectores nacionales e internacionales, incluso a nivel de gobiernos, han cuestionado nuestro modelo de gestión gubernamental sin entender ni tomarse el tiempo de comprender nuestra realidad ni nuestro contexto, y hacen aseveraciones sin ningún tipo de rigor histórico. Esas voces han guardado silencio ante atrocidades en mi país y en otros países del mundo. Este patrón de comportamiento socava la relación entre estados y de estados con instituciones para que éstas sean constructivas y maduras en bienestar de nuestra gente. El Salvador no dará marcha atrás en el camino que hemos emprendido desde junio del 2019. Los resultados son palpables, las estadísticas no mienten, y la esperanza y la paz que respira nuestro pueblo es palpable. El Salvador, unido como nación, enfrentará cualquier desafío y se mantendrá firme en su compromiso de construir el mejor país que podamos para todos nuestros habitantes, que son merecedores de una vez por todas de una vida en paz. Estamos abiertos, como mi presidente lo ha dicho, a trabajar en el hemisferio, con el hemisferio y en el mundo y con el mundo, con todo aquel que esté dispuesto a privilegiar una relación de respeto mutuo, constructiva y de beneficio común para nuestros pueblos. Yo los invito, los abrazo y quisiera tener la oportunidad de que visitaran nuestro nuevo país, nuestro nuevo El Salvador, y sintieran de primera mano la esperanza y la alegría y la sonrisa por este presente y por el futuro de nuestra gente. Muchas gracias y que Dios bendiga a nuestras Américas.
Muchas gracias, canciller. Le ofrezco la palabra a la delegación de Dominica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, Ministers of Foreign Affairs, heads of delegations, permanent representatives, alternate representatives, permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Mr. Chair, I bring greetings from the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, and his best wishes for a successful 53rd General Assembly. I also bring greetings from the Honorable Dr. Vince Henderson, Minister for Foreign Affairs, who was already in Washington, D.C. for this assembly, but had to return home due to threat to the Commonwealth of Dominica from Tropical Storm Brett. Mr. President, this is yet another reminder of the climate impact on our region. I join others in expressing congratulations to you, sir, on your ascension to chairmanship of this assembly. Mr. Chairman, we are aware that the multidimensional theme of this assembly, strengthening a culture of democratic accountability with human rights promotion, protection, and equity in the hemisphere, comes at a time when the world is emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. The financial impact of the pandemic on the economies of our member states, the effect of the Ukraine war, tightening global financial conditions, and intensifying and unprecedented climate events. For the Commonwealth of Dominica, these events come on the heels of a devastating Category 5 hurricane, and while we were implementing our plans to becoming a fully climate resilient nation by 2030. In these times, democratic accountability must focus on development, management, and implementation of practical policies and programs that address to the basic and fundamental needs of our people. This, we submit, is the only way to secure human rights. It is from this vantage point I will address you. Mr. President, the Commonwealth of Dominica believes that fundamental to the strengthening of democratic accountability with human rights protection and promotion and equity in our hemisphere is education of its citizenry. The government of the Commonwealth of Dominica continues its aggressive program towards universal education and has to date achieved universal access to preschool, primary, and secondary education. This is accompanied by an ongoing program that has seen a significant increase in the access to college education and progress in an ambitious policy to have one member in each family attend university. We highlight here civic education as critical to fostering awareness of human rights, democratic principles, and responsibility as and among citizens, and the associate curriculum is being prepared by our Ministry of Education. Mr. Chairman, maintaining a healthy society and workforce is a prerequisite for productivity and economic development. The government of the Commonwealth of Dominica has recently made strides in upgrading its health facilities with the completion of a new tertiary level care facility, along with several new and upgraded primary health centers with new services added. Free hospital care is provided for nationals below the age of 18 and those above 60 years. These achievements are costly but necessary, despite very limited resources. We are grateful to those who provide assistance to us in this journey. Mr. Chairman, affordable and resilient housing is a human right like no other. Since the passage of Hurricane Maria, government has intensified its housing program with a substantial increase in the construction of resilient housing, making them available to the vulnerable and to those who need them the most. Mr. Chairman, we admit that the pursuit of becoming the world's first climate resilient nation is an ambitious initiative, but it is imperative. Speaking on this matter, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, added, Dominica has defied expectation and is implementing a range of policies to promote sustainable economic development, restore livelihoods, improve construction and design standards, and renew infrastructure. The work plans and programs of each sector has been adjusted and adapted to include resiliency, and we will endeavor to continue along that path. We are determined to succeed, but we will need the continued assistance of our partners. Mr. Chairman, we are fully aware that the international efforts to combat greenhouse gas are insufficient if the looming catastrophe is to be averted. We must all continue to advance the mitigation and adaptation agenda under the Paris Agreement. On our part, the Commonwealth of Dominica has a positive history in the protection of the environment, and one of our key investments is that the development of geothermal energy, which will reduce the Commonwealth of Dominica's reliance on use of fossil fuels. Mr. Chairman, with respect to the financing of initiatives to secure human rights activities discussed above, I need to make these 2 points. We support the work of the development of the Multi-Dimensional Vulnerability Index to assessing the vulnerability of small island states and other countries, and serve as the criterion for access to and allocation of concessional resources among countries. Also, the Bridgetown Initiative is an action plan to reform the global financial system so that the world can better respond to current and future crises. We add our voice to the nations of this hemisphere, calling for the full support of these two transformative proposals. The specific measures I highlight above are not exhaustive, but are supported by other measures such as ensuring food security, promotion of a secure and crime-free society, and accessible legal and judicial system. Finally, we applaud the OAS continued work to strengthen regional and international cooperation among member states that foster sharing of best practices, expertise, monitoring and promotion of human rights and democratic norms in our hemisphere. We also recognize the stellar work of CD in our region, and we commend the effort of Ms. Kim Osborne, Executive Secretary, and her staff in the delivery of services to member states. We join others in the call for increased support of this very important area. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Le ofrezco la palabra a la delegación de Grenada.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, esteemed colleague foreign ministers, heads of delegation, permanent observers, chair of the Permanent Council, representatives of international organizations, representatives of civil society. Good morning to all. I join the other delegations around this table in congratulating you, Mr. President, on your presiding over this regular session of the Assembly. I bring everyone greetings, warm greetings from Grenada, the spice of the Caribbean, on the day when my government celebrates its first year in office. Grenada is firmly on a path to sustainable development that is being forged by a robust transformational agenda, which my government has charted. Mr. President, fora like this General Assembly are crucial to enhancing and amplifying the level of our regional dialogue as we map a steady course, not just for individual countries, but for this organization that has the potential to support our development efforts. 8 months ago, we met in Lima to discuss the challenges facing our hemisphere, challenges that are no respecter of sovereignty, sub-regional grouping, gender, race, or ethnicity. Have we advanced? What is the new rating on our scorecard? Mr. President, my delegation would not be a party to simply paying lip service to the issues when we sit around this table. We will deem this 53rd regular session worthwhile if we seek to meaningfully address the decline in democracy in some of our member states and the multidimensional forces that threaten our security and stability, such as the illicit trafficking of firearms. And if we meaningfully address the damaging effects of the climate crisis, support efforts to restructure the global financial architecture, and advance viable models of funding mechanisms to finance the development needs of small island developing states, including the resilience portion of climate change. Mr. President, June 1st marked the official beginning of the hurricane season, and the Eastern Caribbean is already experiencing periods of severe weather. Some of our islands are currently under threat of flooding and massive landslides. According to the predictions of the weather experts, the 2023 hurricane season has the potential to generate 7 storms, which may become hurricanes. Islands like Grenada, Mr. President, are always conscious of the potentially devastating impact that one storm or hurricane can have on our economy. One tropical storm or hurricane can disrupt, destroy lives and livelihoods, and cause unimaginable hardships. Mr. President, the gravity of these and other challenges is the reason that my delegation has co-sponsored several of the resolutions and declarations tabled at this Assembly. But we'll be remiss if we do not encourage member states to earnestly examine the value proposition of this hemispheric organization. On the surface, it appears that sister nations of the Americas believe that there is value in membership, and most have remained members of the OAS. The question becomes, is it because this organization truly holds a measure of value and worth for member states? If this is the case, then it must be evidenced by our renewed commitment to ensuring that the procedures that govern the OAS are reinforced, that the OAS can operate from a fiscally strong position, and that there is accountability in governance. Recently, several questions were put to member states during retreat with the aim of taking an open and honest look at the health of this organization. From my delegation's perspective, unless we are prepared to strategically design a means to enhance the value and relevance of the organization within the hemisphere, address the issue of strengthening the relationship between member states and the Secretariat, or determine a list of the top priorities for the OAS to focus on, why do we gather here, Mr. President? My delegation challenges member states to evaluate the organization's value and vision, its institutional management and governance, and its resources to make it fit for purpose at this time. Which leads me to the budget of the OAS, simply to say that we need to rebuild and strengthen the organization by putting it on a sound financial footing, financial path that enables it to adequately carry out its mandate in our collective interest. Mr. President, political actions have human consequences, and it is good, in fact, it is correct to focus on human rights and the respect for democratic institutions. But, Mr. President, we must not be selective in our application of these principles. All of us have friends who have sinned and fallen short of the glory of democracy. Yet, we embrace them when it is in our singular interest. It is in this regard, Mr. President, that we call for the ending of the financial and economic blockade of Cuba and, to a lesser extent, Venezuela. These actions, Mr. President, have dire consequences for the citizens of the Eastern Caribbean in particular. We talk about the right to health. Cuba, almost single-handedly, has been responsible for providing healthcare services to hundreds of thousands of people in the Eastern Caribbean at minimal cost to our states. They have trained our doctors, our nurses, other people in the healthcare industry. We talk about energy security. Through the Petro-Caribe arrangement with Venezuela, countries in the Eastern Caribbean were in the past able to have reliable and affordable access to energy, to fuel. So we therefore send out this call to this body to ensure that the people of the Eastern Caribbean do not continue to be collateral damage in a fight among the big boys. Mr. President, my delegation believes that we can achieve the ideals of strengthening a culture of democratic accountability with human rights, promotion, protection, and equality in the Americas, when we fortify our democratic institutions and recommit our full support for multinational organizations so they can deliver shared prosperity to all citizens of the Americas. And with your leave, Mr. President, I wish to take this opportunity to acknowledge the service of our outgoing ambassador, permanent representative, Smith, who I'm sure may have told her colleagues that her tour of duty comes to an end next week. Ambassador Smith has been a model representative of Grenada, and she has served us well over the past, I'm afraid to say 29 years. She is an exemplary international civil servant, and we know she will continue to serve the peoples of this hemisphere with integrity and distinction in whatever capacity she chooses. On behalf of the government and people of Grenada, I say thank you, Ambassador Smith, for your service and commitment and for a job well done. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, I take it that you did finish your presentation, correct? Le ofrecemos la palabra al delegado de Guatemala.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Saludo con un especial aprecio al señor secretario general Luis Almagro, a los excelentísimos señoras y ministros y secretarios de Relaciones Exteriores y jefes de delegación, a nuestro querido amigo, excelentísimo secretario general adjunto, embajador Néstor Méndez, señoras y señores, colegas, amigos todos, en este periodo de sesiones tan importante nos juntamos aquí en este maravilloso e histórico Salón de las Américas, donde todos los ángulos del mismo nos recuerdan y nos evocan la importancia de por qué estamos aquí. Defender nuestra democracia, nuestra paz, nuestra unidad, los valores que hemos ratificado en esta tan importante carta que nos permite consolidar nuestra democracia y, por supuesto, estos valores contenidos en el artículo 2 de la Carta Constitutiva son los principios y valores que protegeremos a toda costa y con mucha responsabilidad. El tema de esta asamblea, fortaleciendo una cultura de responsabilidad democrática como promoción y protección e igualdad de los derechos humanos en las Américas, cobra vigencia en este momento y especialmente para nosotros los guatemaltecos que este domingo 25 de junio estaremos cumpliendo con los elementos esenciales de la democracia representativa por medio de la celebración de nuestras elecciones, las cuales serán libres, justas y basadas en el sufragio universal, y por supuesto como una expresión de soberanía del pueblo para elegir los cargos de presidente, vicepresidente, diputados al Congreso, corporaciones municipales y diputados al Parlamento Centroamericano. Quiero destacar esto porque en el mismo compiten 22 binomios presidenciales y vicepresidenciales y contamos con el acompañamiento de distintas misiones de observación electoral, entre ellas la de la Unión Europea y por supuesto de la OEA, mismas que han participado en nuestro país desde 1970 y es más que la experiencia que nos ha dado el poder construir una democracia gracias a ese acompañamiento positivo que hemos tenido ya desde hace más de 20 procesos electorales. También quiero destacar un punto muy importante, la labor que hemos venido realizando juntos por medio de la visión del señor presidente Alejandro Yamatei y los puntos que son trascendentales también de nuestra democracia para lograr que tengamos un futuro próspero y sostenible todos Con esta visión, el señor presidente Alejandro Yamatei Falla ha implementado la Política General del Gobierno 2020-2024 integrada por 5 pilares fundamentales: economía, competitividad y prosperidad, desarrollo social, gobernabilidad y seguridad en el desarrollo, y esto es parte también de un Estado responsable, transparente y efectivo, especialmente las relaciones con el mundo. Quiero destacar también los éxitos que hemos tenido en el marco del cumplimiento de las responsabilidades de la Convención Interamericana contra la Corrupción, el desarrollo de un gobierno abierto y electrónico, por supuesto, los compromisos que hemos adquirido también en materia de salud mundial y los avances tan positivos que hemos tenido de cara a la pandemia del COVID-19. En el plano económico, Guatemala ha mantenido un crecimiento económico y una baja volatilidad y deuda pública, y ha demostrado resiliencia macroeconómica y una estabilidad financiera envidiable. Incluso en el contexto de la recuperación económica del COVID, hemos sido reconocidos por el Fondo Monetario Internacional, el Banco Mundial, por haber implementado una serie de medidas y estímulos fiscales que permitieron que los impactos de la pandemia hoy no hayan cobrado un impacto más severo en las condiciones de los guatemaltecos. Guatemala no se detiene y seguiremos trabajando fuertemente en la atracción de la inversión y de los capitales que nos permitan generar empleo, salud y trabajo. Señor presidente, quiero destacar en este momento las oportunidades que tenemos frente a los retos comunes, como lo es el fenómeno de la migración irregular, y destacar también que tenemos una gran oportunidad para fomentar la migración circular y maximizar los beneficios que hoy nos permite tener los acuerdos que hemos alcanzado a través de la Cumbre de las Américas, el Pacto Mundial de Migración, para lograr una migración ordenada, segura, regular y optativa. Hemos venido promoviendo también las oportunidades de trabajadores temporales en diferentes países del mundo, y agradecemos el compromiso también de los Estados Unidos, Canadá, España e Italia para poder hacer de esto una realidad y llevar esperanza a nuestros connacionales. Seguiremos trabajando fuertemente también en los diferentes foros regionales como la CRM, los MIRPS, y por supuesto hoy no podemos dejar de mencionar, y que ya después de haber transcurrido 16 largos meses desde el inicio de la invasión ilegal e injustificada y no provocada por parte de la Federación de Rusia sobre el territorio soberano de Ucrania, reiterar que esto constituye un flagrante y sin duda alguna terrible momento para todas y cada una de las víctimas de este terrible conflicto. Esta violación flagrante a la Carta de las Naciones Unidas también nos hace reflexionar, ya que Guatemala ha condenado enérgicamente las consecuencias humanitarias que han sido sufridas por el pueblo ucraniano, incluyendo los altos niveles de personas internamente desplazadas y refugiados, así como los ataques a instalaciones civiles causando miles de víctimas, y todo ello ser catalogado como un reprochable e inadmisible acto que no puede quedar impune. Guatemala considera que se debe garantizar la justicia de todas las víctimas de los conflictos y la previsión para futuros delitos y crímenes de guerra. Y por ello mi país ha apoyado y cofacilitado las negociaciones de la creación de registro de daños, y apoyamos toda la iniciativa que busque crear un tribunal especial de los crímenes de agresión, y buscamos también, sin duda alguna, que se inicien los diálogos para fomentar un proceso de paz que permita concluir con este terrible conflicto. Señor presidente, quiero destacar, y para concluir, el ferviente compromiso del señor presidente de la República, del pueblo de Guatemala, en todos los aspectos necesarios para garantizar que este organismo tan importante sea sin duda alguna nuestro símbolo y vehículo para llevar a un mejor advenimiento a nuestras futuras generaciones. Nos solidarizamos con los pueblos y hermanos caribeños que en este momento están sufriendo los embates del cambio climático a través de esta tormenta que se avecina, y desde ya nos solidarizamos con ustedes y nos ponemos a su disposición para poder apoyar en cualquier cosa que necesiten. Vamos a seguir trabajando en conjunto con nuestros hermanos caribeños, porque somos parte también de la cuenca del Caribe, y como hermanos latinoamericanos y caribeños trabajaremos juntos para poder abordar de una manera integral y holística las soluciones que sean necesarias para que de cara a la COP28 podamos llevar una posición única sobre los cambios que tenemos que realizar y las soluciones que implementaremos. Quiero también, desde ya, sin duda alguna, agradecer todo el apoyo que hemos recibido de parte de los colegas del hemisferio, especialmente favorecemos la representación geográfica y equitativa que hemos podido llegar a alcanzar hoy en la Comisión Interamericana de los Derechos Humanos. Y sin duda alguna, agradecemos el apoyo a la candidatura a la reelección del doctor Estuardo Ralón Orellana de Guatemala, quien durante su mandato como comisionado se ha destacado por su compromiso con la dignidad humana y la promoción de los derechos humanos. Señor presidente, al finalizar deseo expresar mi más firme apoyo a la Organización de los Estados Americanos bajo el liderazgo del secretario Luis Almagro y su equipo de trabajo. Con esta visión, Guatemala continuará promoviendo los valores democráticos, la vida, la concepción, la familia y el respeto a los derechos humanos de todas las personas, sin distinción alguna y conforme al ordenamiento jurídico y los compromisos adquiridos por medio de los convenios y tratados internacionales que hemos ratificado. Que Dios bendiga a todos los países de las Américas, pero en especial que Dios bendiga a Guatemala. Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente.
Muchísimas gracias, señor canciller. Ofrezco la palabra a Guyana.
Esteemed colleague ministers of foreign affairs, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, permanent observers, delegates. It is a pleasure to be here in the halls of the Americas to join in the deliberations that are of critical importance to the people of our hemisphere. Let me take this opportunity to thank the Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, and staff for the excellent preparations made for this assembly. Excellencies, the government of Guyana remains committed to the 4 pillars upon which this esteemed organization rests: democracy, human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development. The pillars of the institution's charter are as relevant now as they were from the creation of the OAS. We will continue to support efforts for meaningful reform that is needed to preserve and strengthen the institution. The theme of this year's General Assembly is apt: strengthening a culture of democratic accountability with human rights promotion, protection, and equality in the Americas. Electoral monitoring remains one of the core strengths of the OAS, and we have seen the electoral observer missions preserve democracy within this hemisphere. In my own country, Guyana, we have witnessed the strength of the role of the OAS's electoral observer mission in August of 2020, when our democracy was threatened and our electoral process was put at risk. This organization must work to ensure that democratic institutions are preserved and democratic principles upheld. Guyana is committed to the respect for human rights. We must celebrate the American Declaration and the 25th anniversary of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. These documents stand the test of time. The government of Guyana has nominated a candidate in the person of Dr. Arif Bulkan for the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights as a sign towards the value we place on rights of indigenous peoples, women, girls, children, and other vulnerable groups. And we also hope that he would be given an opportunity to serve on the commission. Guyana has responsibility for agriculture and food security in CARICOM's quasi-cabinet. This is a task that we do not take lightly, as the region's import bill remains exorbitant. However, what can derail our progress in cutting our food import bill in half is climate change. Ghana was therefore pleased to support and co-sponsor the resolution proposed by Barbados entitled Towards Enhanced Access to Climate Financing. The resolution calls for the need and for a retooling of the global financial architecture to cater for the effects of climate change on small island developing and low-lying coastal states, enabling them to build back more fiscal space. There is a need for timely action in Haiti. Guyana supports the work of the working group on Haiti led by Trinidad and Tobago. The eminent group of persons under the auspices of the CARICOM good offices must be commended for the initial steps taken in the recent meeting with Haitian stakeholders held during the 11th to the 13th of June this year in Jamaica. The meeting sought to facilitate inclusive dialogue among Haitian stakeholders in an effort to find a solution to the protracted multidimensional crisis in Haiti. Excellencies, we must seize the opportunity to bring about the improvement in the lives of the people of our hemisphere in staying true to our principles of the Charter of the OAS and the goals of our plans of action to preserve democracy, respect for the rule of law and human rights, and recommit to equity and social justice. I thank you.
Muchas gracias, Canciller. Le ofrezco la palabra a Trinidad y Tobago.
Your Excellency Roberto Alvarez, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic and Chair of this 53rd regular session of the General Assembly, Your Excellencies, Ministers of Foreign Affairs and various heads of delegations, Your Excellency Luis Almagro, Secretary General, Your Excellency Nestor Mendez, Assistant Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. As an OAS and CARICOM member state, geographically located in the biodiversity-rich tropics, this General Assembly, being held once again in the well-known hurricane season, with several CARICOM member states facing its annual threat from tropical storms, currently Brett, is exceptionally significant for Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, this is so particularly in the context of the following principal outcome commitments that this delegation has co-sponsored. These are the historic CARICOM Seeker Declaration on Enhancing Resilience and Support for Central America and the Caribbean in the face of climate change, the most essential resolution towards enhanced access to climate financing, the most urgently required resolution towards the immediate restoration of security, strengthening the humanitarian assistance and support for protection of human rights and strengthening democracy in Haiti, and the annually important omnibus resolutions on advancing integral development and multidimensional security in the Americas. For Trinidad and Tobago and CARICOM, energy security, food security, and access to development financing are the highest priorities, which are integrated into our principal climate-related sustainable development and multidimensional security interests advanced at this 53rd General Assembly. Concerning our priority interests of achieving multidimensional security at both the national and regional levels, very recently, on April 17th and 18, 2023, the government of Trinidad and Tobago co-hosted with the CARICOM Secretariat in Port of Spain a regional symposium addressing crime and violence as a public health issue under the theme, Violence as a Public Health Issue, the Crime Challenge. Chaired by Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and lead CARICOM Head of Government with responsibility for energy and security, this symposium focused on gun violence and the illicit flow of firearms into the region, which are directly attributable to the high crime statistics, or related to the high crime statistics in the region. Without a doubt, Chair, crime and violence threaten democracy and human rights, undermine the rule of law, erode trust in institutions, and hinder economic growth and development. Therefore, Trinidad and Tobago asserts that addressing crime and violence also strengthens a culture of democratic accountability. Beyond the OAS, we are also engaged in high-level dialogue with key hemispheric partners to address these and other concerns at the regional level while seeking complementarity in other international organizations. It is in the broader context of these principal interests and priorities for our Twin Island Republic that the theme of this General Assembly has received sharpened focus by Trinidad and Tobago. Chair, at the end of Trinidad and Tobago's Permanent Council chairmanship, and in a landmark expression of our commitment to strengthening a culture of democratic accountability in the Americas, we adopted Declaration CP-DEC 79, entitled Advancing and Promoting Social Justice and Equity in the Americas. We adopted that declaration to address structural and systemic sources of inequitable privilege and unjust advantage that may be used to deprive persons of social justice and the exercise of their rights to access to social services. Trinidad and Tobago therefore calls for the elimination of all such structural and systemic sources of inequitable privilege and unjust advantage, including cultural appropriation, financial inclusion, gender stereotyping, historical erasure, racial profiling, territorial stigmatization, and wage discrimination, particularly against women, and especially in rural areas, in order to strengthen a culture of democratic accountability in the Americas. Chair, from the perspective of a strong, stable, small democracy in this hemisphere, Trinidad and Tobago is convinced that first, democracy is fundamentally domestic. It is therefore from that unique domestic reality that in Trinidad and Tobago, a culture of democratic accountability is both expressed and experienced by women, girls, boys, and men in their respective villages, towns, and cities, and the promotion, protection, and equality of their inalienable rights are enshrined in our Constitution and are assured by the prioritization that we give to our national education and social protection policy frameworks. Second, Trinidad and Tobago is characterized by our recognition of the strength of our diversity for representative democracy. We therefore also acknowledge that there is no one-size-fits-all for strengthening a culture of democratic accountability, and we accept that there are diverse approaches for the promotion and protection of human rights to achieve our sustainable development aspirations. To this end, as an active member, represented on its board of directors by our Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Bridget Anizette George, Trinidad and Tobago continues to promote the Inter-American Parliamentary Dialogue, Parl-Americas, as an important regional forum for enhancing the understanding of our respective domestic and diverse democratic systems and institutions, and we co-sponsored the call for the Special Permanent Council meeting held on May 19, 2023, to promote the Inter-American Parliamentary engagement in accordance with the mandate assigned at our 52nd General Assembly. Third, Trinidad and Tobago is committed to democracy that delivers. Therefore, our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, has assigned the highest policy implementation priority to digital transformation for strengthening a culture of democratic accountability through improved public service delivery that will promote public trust and protect the public interest. It is therefore from this balanced posture of readiness to prioritize all four strategic pillars of this organization that Trinidad and Tobago is obliged to express its concerns for the absence of an integrative approach to multilateral cooperation at the OAS. More specifically, as a consistent provider of voluntary contributions to the MESECV, as well as to CICAD, Trinidad and Tobago continues to be uneasy at the regular funding subordination of our principal interests of sustainable development and multidimensional security. Furthermore, we consider this an appropriate time for the OAS to begin the consultative process for adopting an inter-American Development Charter. Chair, this apparently discriminatory and evidently unequal experience for Trinidad and Tobago is reflected in the institutional culture of the OAS, even in the geographical representation of its personnel. Trinidad and Tobago therefore welcomes the anticipated comprehensive review of this organization and looks forward to the earliest implementation of the measures for strengthening the governance, leadership, and management of the resources of the OAS, which were agreed on at the Permanent Council retreat facilitated during our Permanent Council chairmanship. Chair, this statement could not conclude without remarks addressed to the grave situation in Haiti, our CARICOM sister nation. This delegation will address this situation further in detail later today. By our acceptance of the responsibility for its leadership, Trinidad and Tobago views the establishment of the Working Group on Haiti in the OAS as timely and necessary to facilitate regular dialogue with all stakeholders so that solutions can be found to address the multidimensional crisis. This working group is a welcome complementary platform to the efforts of CARICOM's Eminent Persons Group, established recently to engage stakeholders in Haiti. Chair, in closing, I reiterate Trinidad and Tobago's commitment to the purpose, principles, and values of this organization, and I express my appreciation to all concerned for organizing this General Assembly. Thank you, Chair.
Muchas gracias. Tiene la palabra la Delegación de Honduras.
Presidente de la Asamblea General, señor Secretario General Adjunto y Adjunto, señores jefes de delegación, señoras y señores. Al pretender valorar el rol histórico que esta centenaria organización regional ha desempeñado en este primer cuarto de siglo, no podemos soslayar las genuinas y legítimas pretensiones que tienen nuestros pueblos en el afán de fortalecer un sistema democrático más justo, equitativo, humanitario y solidario. Pero más allá de lo precedente, aún guardamos la esperanza de no solo alcanzar en el ámbito interno, sino que también en el marco de nuestras relaciones hemisféricas la seguridad y conciliación que demandan nuestros conciudadanos. En ese contexto, aspiramos, conforme a los principios y propósitos básicos de nuestra Carta Fundacional, a no renunciar al progreso y bienestar de nuestro pueblo. Por nuestro origen y pensamiento, rechazar la estigmatización de que somos objetos constantemente. Evitar la promoción de golpes de Estado, ya sean militares o blandos, en base a una falaz doctrina democrática que conduce al atropello de los derechos y libertades fundamentales de nuestros pueblos. Objetamos además doctrinas reaccionarias que mantienen girando en torno a un pensamiento dogmático, un espejismo falso y adverso a la realidad que vivimos. También no mantenernos en una atmósfera de discordia ante quienes, por razones geopolíticas, han generado conflictos que evidentemente crean zozobra y peligro a la humanidad y que lamentablemente nos están conduciendo a su exterminio. De tal manera, abogamos a que esta organización realice, frente a los retos que enfrentamos consecutivamente, un análisis amplio y exhaustivo de la gestión que despliega, recurriendo al diálogo y tolerancia, en el respeto a las diferencias que existen entre nuestros Estados miembros, concerniente a medidas unilaterales y bloqueos que se han generado en contra de pueblos hermanos, decisiones que no coadyuvan o abonan al mejoramiento de las relaciones hemisféricas. Evitemos, por consiguiente, realizar lo que proclamamos consecutivamente en diversas exposiciones e instrumentos internacionales. Por tanto, esta organización debe ser inclusiva, siendo impostergable responder al interés de todos. Señor Presidente, Es preciso determinar, apegado a las actuales circunstancias, cuál es la cultura de responsabilidad democrática, con promoción, protección e igualdad de los derechos humanos en las Américas que hemos de fortalecer. Si es a partir de una visión dicotómica con un doble estándar, sesgado entre los que obedecen determinadas posturas ideológicas que se oponen al desarrollo progresivo de los pueblos, o los que realmente procuramos, a pesar de las adversidades, promover y fortalecer una cultura de respeto a los derechos humanos, evitando en la medida de nuestras posibilidades el choque entre los valores esenciales del ser humano y los intereses políticos estatales. Por consiguiente, se debe realizar una lectura real y transparente de los compromisos que tutelan esas libertades fundamentales para no guiarnos a través de políticas ultramontanas, evitando nuevamente respaldar o hacer eco de hechos como los acontecidos en mi país en junio de 2009. Más de una década perdida que nos condujo a la crisis que actualmente heredamos y que con gran esfuerzo estamos tratando de superar, ejecutando acciones con el ineludible propósito de potenciar la transparencia y la lucha contra la corrupción y la impunidad en estrecha coordinación con las instituciones estatales. En esta nueva administración que dirige la presidenta Xiomara Castro Sarmiento, quien bajo su vocación patriótica, complementada por la férrea voluntad política que la caracteriza, fortalecida en un momento crucial de nuestra historia republicana, no cejará en el empeño de llevar a cabo un importante programa de bienestar en favor de nuestra población, contraída en cumplir indefectiblemente con los valores democráticos y en todos aquellos quehaceres que tiendan a la defensa de nuestra soberanía, libertad, justicia social y solidaridad, a efecto de brindarle una efectiva protección y progreso a nuestros compatriotas. Señor presidente, oteamos el futuro con optimismo, no obstante las presiones internas y externas de que estamos siendo objeto, pese a los sabotajes y constantes ataques al que está siendo sometido nuestro gobierno por aquellos que consideran un delito luchar por el progreso de sus pueblos, lo cual nos ha inducido a efectuar denodados esfuerzos internos para superar el desastre que nos dejó la administración anterior con la confabulación de sectores internos complementados con una amplia solidaridad o cooperación internacional, lo cual ha posibilitado que actualmente se vaya apreciando un franco proceso de recuperación con una amplia participación ciudadana. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, señor representante. Le ofrezco la palabra a la canciller de Jamaica.
Thank you, Mr. President, Your Excellency, Secretary General, colleague foreign ministers and other heads of delegation, Excellencies, permanent representatives of the OAS. Mr. President, I take this opportunity to congratulate you on your elevation to the role and your efficient management of this assembly thus far. I also thank Secretary General Almagro and Assistant Secretary General, as well as the team at the Secretariat, for the excellent arrangements made for us to meet here today. As we've stated in other meetings in the margin of this assembly, even as we encourage reflection on the modernization of various matters in response to the massive changes in the world around us, not only since 1948, but since COVID, Jamaica values highly the fact that the OAS continues to provide a forum for countries in the Western Hemisphere to deliberate on issues of mutual importance based on the core values reflected in the 4 pillars: democracy, human rights, multidimensional security, and integral development. Jamaica values highly and remains committed to a vibrant multilateral order which provides for the equal participation of all states in global governance and the development of solutions to common challenges. In this regard, our theme provides the opportunity for reflection on these issues of mutual concern. Chair, Excellencies, Jamaica has always been on the frontier of advancement in democracy and electoral systems. We were one of the first states in the world to implement universal adult suffrage. giving all citizens 21 and over an equal right to share in governance as early as 1944. As a vibrant democracy with ultimate respect for the rule of law, Jamaica has been undergoing proudly a national transformation in its society, economy, and now its constitution. At the root of all our efforts are consultation, inclusion, and partnership. To further strengthen our democracy, the Government of Jamaica, through the newly created Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, is undertaking the most fundamental constitutional reform since independence in 1962. In 2011, we amended the Constitution to create a Charter of Fundamental Rights. But now, the major area of focus is our transition from a constitutional monarchy to a republic in order to give full expression to our nationhood. The process is taking a consensus-based approach that allows for robust discussions between key stakeholders in government, opposition, civil society, and our diaspora. Importantly, the government, in pursuit of strengthening our democracy, is committed to a public education program on the Constitution and other laws of Jamaica to improve our citizens' knowledge, understanding, and responsibilities in a free and democratic society. The government is honored and proud to offer the Jamaican people participation in such a wide-ranging, consequential, and historic process. Chair, Excellencies, Jamaica will continue to actively support initiatives within the OAS and other fora for the promotion and protection of human rights. In that regard, we remain deeply concerned over the worsening crisis in Haiti, the world's first Black republic and second in the Western Hemisphere to gain independence. Haiti's ongoing multidimensional crisis is exacerbated by increasing gang violence, kidnappings, and brutality against women and girls. It has challenged the capacity of the state to guarantee basic rights to its citizens. Jamaica, together with other member states of CARICOM, continue to offer tangible supports and remain ready to be a part, Jamaica remains ready to be a part of multinational security efforts with the appropriate jurisdictional mandate aimed at restoring peace and stability in Haiti through implementation of Haitian-led solutions. This, as we recognize the practical reality that peace and security are necessary elements for distribution of humanitarian aid, for restoration of public order, and for free and fair elections. We also recognize, however, that greater consensus within Haiti is required for the sustainability of any agreed path. In pursuance of CARICOM's commitment to play a good office's role to help widen consensus around a Haitian-determined path to peace, stability, and democracy, Jamaica is honored to have hosted more than 50 Haitian stakeholders for 3 days of talks in Kingston. Stakeholders were able to address the core issues of the interim governance measures needed to restore confidence in the transition and to ensure that the government can deliver on its commitments. The Government of Jamaica believes that the Kingston talks were a critical step in the right direction, and we remain committed to supporting the CARICOM Good Offices processes led by the CARICOM Eminent Persons Group. We also are convinced of the need for sustained international attention on Haiti and will continue to lend our voice to this effort, including through this organization. Jamaica looks forward to hearing of further developments on actions taken by the Government of Haiti and on stakeholder discussions continuing in Haiti, whether facilitated by the Eminent Persons Group or otherwise. Chair, Excellencies, Jamaica is also well aware that the issue of gang violence is pervasive among a number of our member states. Crime and violence impinges on the enjoyment of human rights, particularly the right to life, liberty, and security of person, as well as the right to freedom of movement. We cannot lose sight of the impact of violent crime on our democratic societies and the potential weakening of states by criminal elements. Jamaica has identified the proliferation of small arms and light weapons as a primary element of the equation. Prime Minister Holness, in his recent address to the 77th session of the UN General Assembly in September, made a strong appeal for a war on guns. Given the gravity of the situation, it is clear that we need to deploy as a hemisphere our efforts, resources, and energies on ending the flow of illicit weapons through our hemisphere, given the direct correlation between the proliferation of arms and the level of crime and violence in our societies. While Jamaica and many member states do not manufacture these weapons, we are severely impacted by their use and availability. We were pleased, therefore, to join by amicus, along with a number of CARICOM states, Mexico's legal action to compel manufacturers of small arms and light weapons to modify their practices to keep our people safe. The flow of weapons is inconsistent with our hemisphere's global image and commitment to being a zone of peace. We must continue to strengthen cooperation to deal with this scourge and to keep these weapons out of our jurisdictions. Chair, Excellencies, the final matters I would like to discuss with regard to promoting and securing human rights are digital transformation, cybersecurity, and the emergence of artificial intelligence. Jamaica is pursuing a program of digital transformation in order to enhance the enjoyment of rights by the underserved and the most vulnerable. The government is creating the infrastructure and has developed a digital currency backed by the central bank to allow for digital expansion of public services to our citizens and to empower, in particular, our young people, our elderly, and persons living in rural communities who remain largely underserved by the banking sector. We're also pleased to be actively participating in the elaboration of a treaty on cybersecurity at the UN. In fact, we believe that as our countries seek to harness digital transformation for the empowerment of our people, we must also recognize how technology is being misused by elements of populations to pursue cyber attacks on useful and important systems in the public and private sectors, and to spread misinformation and disinformation, which again can undermine democratic societies. The widening application of artificial intelligence is an exciting development. Already it's proving helpful to humanity, particularly in the areas of health. However, like all resources and innovations, there must be appropriate regulations to govern its use and to prevent its impinging on the rights of our citizens. It is critical that our countries, and indeed this organization, pay attention to this phenomenon and recognize the changing face of what it means to support and maintain democracy and democratic accountability. Excellencies, many members of the OAS are developing states, being either small islands or having significant low-lying coastal areas, particularly vulnerable to external shocks. 70% of the Caribbean population lives on the coast or within 5 kilometers of the coast. Main cities are less than a mile therefrom. Climate change, including sea level rise, therefore poses a clear and present existential risk. We have a responsibility to scale up adaptation and mitigation to secure the environment and reasonable quality of life for future generations. Despite our small carbon footprint, Jamaica continues to do its part in mitigating climate change, cognizant of the indisputable fact that we have only one planet. However, due to high debt burdens which complicate an already tight fiscal space, developing countries like all of us in CARICOM find it difficult or near impossible to take all actions necessary on our own. Moreover, developed and industrialized nations have much more than a moral obligation to take greater action, since they have built their wealth by conduct responsible for the crisis. Jamaica continues to advocate for developed countries to both scale up their climate action and for multilateral action approaches to beat our climate targets. More specifically, we continue to call on the developed world to follow through on their commitments, including operationalizing the Loss and Damage Fund decided on in COP27. Jamaica also continues to call on developed and industrialized nations to effect meaningful reforms to the international financial architecture, including through elements of the Bridgetown Initiative, so that developing countries can access affordable and appropriate financing to address climate and other cross-cutting development issues. Chairs, Excellencies, the OAS must ensure that the citizens of our hemisphere, particularly our young people, are equipped to compete globally. Appropriate resources must therefore be geared towards the development of our human capital with increased emphasis on STEAM training. In this regard, the OAS must remain viable in order to play a strategic role in assisting the countries of the hemisphere to advance our peoples in this regard. At the national level, Jamaica will continue to implement its Vision 2030 National Development Plan, which is more than 96% aligned to the 2030 Development Agenda within the UN system. We will ensure that we place emphasis on the empowerment of our citizens through the creation of opportunities, economic growth and resilience, access to health and education, protection of the environment, and gender equality. We therefore look forward to our partnership with the OAS for continued support in the development of human resources and training, capacity building, innovation, and strengthening our micro, small, and medium enterprises. Mr. Chairman, I must, before closing, indicate that it has been a tremendous honor for Jamaica to have been afforded the privilege of serving on two important bodies within the OAS remit of the SEDI, namely the Inter-American Committee on Science and Technology and the Inter-American Committee on Tourism, CITUR. I take the opportunity to thank all member states for their continued support and look forward to continued collaboration for the benefit of the hemisphere, especially in the context of post-COVID recovery. As our Commissioner, Margaret Macaulay, approaches the end of her second term on the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, of which she currently serves as President, please allow me to also publicly convey appreciation for this opportunity to advance human rights protection in the region. Mr. Chairman, as we also recognize the significant anniversary of the OAS, to recommit to the ideals upon which this organization was founded, Jamaica affirms once more that we remain committed to the work of the OAS as we seek to make the hemisphere a better place for the development of our peoples and for succeeding generations. I thank you.
Muchas gracias, Canciller. Le ofrezco la palabra a la delegación de México.
Muchas gracias, Presidencia. Es un honor para mí dirigirme a ustedes en representación de México y de la canciller designada Alicia Bárcena en este 53º periodo ordinario de sesiones de la Asamblea General de la Organización de los Estados Americanos. La canciller Bárcena me ha pedido enviarles un saludo atento a todos los países representados en esta asamblea y reitera el apoyo a nuestra embajadora Luz Helena Baños, representante distinguida de nuestra política exterior, definida por el Estado mexicano y por su Constitución. México participa nuevamente en esta asamblea para reafirmar su vocación multilateral y su compromiso histórico con la paz, aspecto tradicional de la política exterior mexicana desde Isidro Fabela hasta García Robles. Reiteramos nuestro compromiso con los derechos humanos, la democracia y el derecho internacional, en apego a nuestros principios constitucionales de política exterior. Estos valores y principios han delineado y caracterizado nuestra actuación en todos los espacios multilaterales en los que participamos, incluyendo la OEA, donde México aboga para que esta organización se conduzca siempre bajo las normas establecidas en su Carta Fundacional y para que la promoción de sus 4 pilares se realicen priorizando el diálogo y la cooperación con una perspectiva humanista y solidaria. La OEA cuenta con el potencial para convertirse en un factor de cambio para el bienestar de la gente, al ofrecer un espacio hemisférico en el que los estados establezcan esquemas de cooperación efectivos y sin injerencias, y respetando la soberanía de los estados en apego a los propósitos y principios de esta organización. Este potencial se demuestra en la Comisión y en la Corte Interamericanas de Derechos Humanos, el compromiso contra el tráfico ilícito de armas, o los importantes avances en materia de protección de poblaciones vulnerables como son los indígenas, los adultos mayores, la población LGBTIQ+, y las niñas y mujeres en toda su diversidad. A pesar de ello, en los últimos años, el hemisferio ha enfrentado retos inéditos para los que la OEA no ha sido capaz de coordinar soluciones adecuadas para ello. Es necesario reencauzar a la organización hacia la construcción de una verdadera integración hemisférica que permita atender los enormes retos y necesidades a los que se enfrentan nuestros países día con día. Señor presidente, estamos en una época de la humanidad marcada por los efectos globales de crisis sanitarias, las tensiones geopolíticas, la inseguridad alimentaria y los devastadores efectos del cambio climático, entre muchos otros. Si algo nos une a los países aquí reunidos, es el objetivo de mejorar las condiciones y calidad de vida de nuestras poblaciones. Es ahí donde tenemos que abocar nuestras atenciones y esfuerzos en el marco de esta organización. Para ello, México seguirá abogando por reformar a la OEA para que atienda los enormes desafíos existentes a partir del diálogo respetuoso e inclusivo y la cooperación de todos los países del hemisferio. La historia de la organización no se puede entender sin la participación comprometida de México. Destaco 4 temas en los cuales ejercemos liderazgo relevante. 1. Promovemos el respeto irrestricto al derecho internacional y en particular el interamericano, que es uno de los grandes aportes de la OEA a nuestros sistemas jurídicos. 2. Mantenemos un compromiso firme con los principales órganos del Sistema Interamericano de Derechos Humanos, que incluye la presencia de prestigiados expertos mexicanos como comisionados y jueces. 3. México ha ratificado las 3 convenciones relativas a la protección de los derechos humanos de las personas mayores, a la lucha contra el racismo, la discriminación racial y formas conexas de intolerancia y contra toda forma de discriminación e intolerancia. Y 4. Presidimos la Comisión de Seguridad Hemisférica, la Conferencia de Estados Partes y la Secretaría Pro Tempore de la Convención Interamericana contra la Fabricación y el Tráfico Ilícito de Armas de Fuego, municiones, explosivos y otros materiales relacionados. Por último, y no menos importante, México es el 4º contribuyente a la organización. Otorgamos además cuotas voluntarias por alrededor de $1,5 millones. Somos respetuosos con la Carta de la OEA y de los mecanismos internos de decisión para abordar en particular los temas financieros y administrativos de la organización. México reitera su compromiso con el multilateralismo y con el espacio interamericano. Para ello, necesitamos una OEA renovada, que sea relevante y que sirva a todos los estados, que genere soluciones sostenibles ante los retos hemisféricos y globales a través de consensos y de diplomacia efectiva, de diálogo y de negociación. Hacemos votos para que la OEA se constituya en un medio eficaz para lograr estas aspiraciones. Muchas gracias.
Muy agradecido, señor delegado de México. No habiendo más oradores, propongo que esta tercera sesión plenaria tome nota de las exposiciones de los jefes de delegación, las cuales quedarán registradas en el acta de esta sesión. La cuarta sesión plenaria está planteada para iniciar a las 5 de la tarde. Sin embargo, dado el extenso, todavía temario, que tenemos por delante, con varias elecciones muy importantes de integrantes de varias comisiones esenciales para el trabajo de nuestra organización, propongo, si no hay oposición, que iniciemos los trabajos de esa cuarta sesión a las 3 de la tarde. ¿No hay oposición? Aprobado.